Welcome to Fudge, the podcast where we dig into the tangled mess of culture, power, and identity. I'm your host, Alexandra. Today's episode might be a little uncomfortable, a little raw, but also very, very real. Let's just ask the question head on. Is true love just a fantasy? Because if we're being honest, and you know we keep it honest here, it seems like everybody cheats. From the glossy celebrity headlines to the whispered stories of friends and co-workers, cheating is everywhere. So why do people do it? Is monogamy outdated? Are we chasing something that never existed to begin with? Or are we just deeply afraid of admitting that love and loyalty are two very different things? Let's take a hard, honest look at modern love and ask whether forever was ever meant to be. Let's dive in. Let's start by throwing out the most outdated idea of cheating, that it only happens when someone crosses a physical boundary, a kiss, a night in a hotel, an affair. Because in 2025, cheating isn't just about sex, it's about attention, it's about secrecy, it's about betrayal of expectations, emotional, psychological, and even digital. The spectrum of infidelity is wide and evolving. You can cheat with your body, yes, but you can also cheat with your mind, with your phone, with your fantasies, with your patterns of escape. And the truth is, modern culture feeds this. Let's take a step back. Emotional cheating is real and often more damaging. A partner confides deeply in a co-worker, shares vulnerabilities they never share at home, texts someone good morning and good night every day while growing increasingly distant from their spouse. Is that cheating? Most would say yes, even if no clothes were removed and no bedsheets were wrinkled. Emotional cheating strikes at the core of intimacy, and in some cases it cuts deeper than physical acts. Because emotional betrayal usually involves a longer lead-up, deeper bonds, and the illusion of innocence. In a culture that encourages constant connectivity, having a work wife or Instagram crush can quickly evolve into an emotionally intimate and ultimately compromising relationship. Digital cheating, the rise of the virtual affair. Let's talk DMs, flirty Snapchats, secret Reddit accounts, virtual reality meetups, OnlyFans subscriptions, sexting. Cheating has gone digital, and it's incredibly easy to hide. Technology has removed barriers. You don't have to sneak off in the night to betray someone anymore. All it takes is a swipe, a click, a tap. And with encrypted messaging apps and disappearing messages, digital infidelity can happen right under someone's nose. And it's not just about what is done, it's also about what's felt. For example, if a partner spends hours liking half-nude photos, chatting with people they claim to be just friends, or maintaining secret digital relationships, it often leaves the other person feeling just as betrayed as if a physical affair had occurred. This brings us to the concept of micro-cheating. Subtle, seemingly harmless behaviours that hint at a lack of full loyalty. Examples include keeping an ex on standby just in case, flirtatious banter you wouldn't want your partner to see, hiding your phone or deleting messages, using dating apps just for validation, but not intending to meet up. Here's the key. Cheating isn't just what you do, it's also what you hide. We live in a society where secrecy is normalized, where people compartmentalize relationships, dodge full accountability, and frame honesty as optional. So micro-cheating thrives in the grey areas. It's cheating with plausible deniability. Movies and TV shows make cheating look complicated, passionate, inevitable. Think about shows like Scandal, The Affair, You, Sex Life, or Bridgerton. Affairs are glamorized. Infidelity is shown not as a moral failure, but as a sign of being truly alive, misunderstood, or trapped in a passionless marriage. And songs, don't get me started. Lyrics often glorify cheating as just another part of the love game, a sign of irresistible temptation. When betrayal is portrayed as romantic, adventurous, or understandable, what message does that send? We begin to internalize the idea that cheating is expected, that everyone does it, that it's natural, that it's human, and maybe it is, but we can't ignore that this message shapes behavior. In some cultures, men are raised to believe they're entitled to variety. Women are taught to compete for loyalty. The idea of being the only one becomes a prize, not a default. And so we develop relationships where cheating isn't shocking, it's anticipated, where loyalty is negotiated instead of given. The underlying message? Love isn't enough. You must be better, sexier, more exciting, or you'll be replaced. That cultural conditioning creates pressure, fear, and insecurity, all of which breeds secrecy, dishonesty, and ultimately betrayal. And let's not forget, many people don't even know what they want from a relationship. They copy what they see. They chase an ideal without knowing what they're signing up for, which brings us back to the culture at large. In summary, cheating isn't just a personal failure. It's a cultural mirror. It reflects the way we were taught to value ourselves, the media we consume, the digital habits we normalize, the expectations we carry into relationships, the emotional hunger we're often too afraid to name out loud. Before we even judge cheaters, we have to interrogate the cultural soup we're all swimming in. Because if everybody's cheating, maybe the problem isn't just with the individuals. Maybe the whole ecosystem of modern love is rigged with landmines. Let's step out of judgment and into curiosity. Why do people cheat? Why do some of the most loving, devoted partners still stray? Why do people risk families, careers, and reputations for a few moments of intimacy, thrill, or connection? Here's the thing. Cheating is rarely just about sex. It's about unmet needs, buried insecurities, emotional hunger, fear, ego, and sometimes deep pain. So let's peel back the layers. It's not always about the other person. Sometimes it's about the self. At the core of many acts of infidelity is identity. Some people cheat not because they're unsatisfied with their partner, but because they're unsatisfied with themselves. They feel stuck. They feel invisible. They feel numb. They feel old. And cheating becomes a way to feel alive again. Esther Perel, a world-renowned psychotherapist who studies infidelity, says something powerful. When people cheat, they're not always looking for another person. They're looking for another version of themselves. They want to feel desired again, seen again, new again. The affair becomes less about escape from their partner and more about escape from who they've become. In this way, cheating is often a misguided form of self-reclamation. People also cheat because something is missing. Intimacy has eroded. Communication has broken down. One partner feels taken for granted. There's no more playfulness, no flirtation, no affirmation. Or maybe there's unresolved trauma, resentment, abandonment, or betrayal that's never been healed. Instead of confronting the pain, people look for relief elsewhere. The affair becomes a coping mechanism, a way to feel soothed, special, or validated in ways they no longer feel at home. That doesn't justify the behavior, but it does explain it. People don't always cheat because they want to hurt their partner. They cheat because they themselves are hurting and don't know how to say it. Let's talk science for a minute. Infidelity lights up the same parts of the brain as gambling and drug use. It activates the dopamine reward system, a hit of excitement, novelty, and thrill. For some, cheating becomes addictive. It's the forbidden nature of it, the adrenaline rush, the sneaking around, the secrecy, the danger. The brain literally rewards this behavior with feel-good chemicals. So even if someone loves their partner, even if they feel guilty, they might still chase that thrill again and again, because for those few moments, they feel alive, desired, unstoppable. That's why affairs often aren't about trading up. They're about trading feelings. The affair may not offer more love, but it offers more intensity. And to the brain, that matters. Let's go deeper. Our patterns in love, including cheating, often trace back to childhood. If someone grew up with inconsistent love, they may become anxious in relationships, constantly fearing abandonment, constantly needing reassurance. If someone grew up learning that love is conditional, they may seek validation from multiple people to feel worthy. These are what psychologists call attachment styles. Anxious attachers might cheat because they fear rejection or aren't getting enough attention. Avoidant attachers might cheat to create emotional distance, a subconscious way of sabotaging intimacy before they feel vulnerable. Disorganized attachers, those with trauma, might swing between both, craving closeness, then pushing it away, then seeking chaos. So cheating isn't always a choice made in the moment. It can be the result of years of emotional programming. Until we become aware of those wounds, we tend to reenact them again and again. Let's be honest, not every affair is deep or complex. Sometimes people cheat because they can. because they want to, because they like the feeling of being wanted, even if it's dishonest, manipulative, or reckless. For some, cheating becomes an ego boost, a way to feel powerful, desirable, in control. And yes, narcissism can play a huge role here. Narcissistic personalities often lack empathy, see relationships as extensions of themselves, feel entitled to admiration or attention, have little guilt about betrayal. In these cases, cheating isn't about emotional pain, it's about entitlement. And here's the danger. If someone doesn't believe the rules apply to them, they'll never feel bad about breaking them. That's why accountability is so important and so often missing in modern dating culture. Everyone does it. Psychologically, behavior becomes easier to justify when it's normalized. If you believe everybody cheats, if you've watched it happen around you, if social media glorifies betrayal as sexy or powerful, if music, TV, and influence make infidelity feel casual or even cute, then your inner guilt starts to quiet. People begin to rationalize, it's just a phase. I'm just exploring. My partner doesn't need to know. I'm not happy. I deserve this. This is how cheating becomes mentally negotiable, not right, not honest, but psychologically understandable, especially in a society where boundaries are blurry and loyalty is no longer sacred. In summary, infidelity is never just about the act. It's about the psychology behind it and the wounds that fuel it. It's about identity, insecurity, unmet needs, childhood trauma, chemical reward systems, cultural reinforcement, emotional immaturity, and sometimes just raw, unchecked ego. Understanding the psychology of infidelity doesn't excuse it, but it does make us ask deeper questions. Are we building relationships with self-aware people? Are we honest about our emotional needs? Are we healing before partnering or expecting our partner to heal us? Because until we get real about what drives cheating, we'll keep repeating it in different bodies, different relationships, and different stages of life. Let's take a moment to acknowledge something obvious, yet often overlooked. The rules of love and commitment have changed. And it's not just because people have changed. It's because the entire dating landscape has been radically transformed. Technology, culture, economics, gender dynamics, and even apps, they've all conspired to rewrite the way we connect, commit, and cheat. So let's unpack it. Let's start with the most glaring shift, the rise of dating apps. On the surface, dating apps promised freedom and access, a way to connect with potential partners beyond your workplace, church, or neighborhood. But beneath the surface, they've reshaped intimacy into a numbers game. You're no longer choosing between a few people you genuinely know. You're swiping through an endless stream of curated profiles, carefully crafted bios, and filtered photos. And here's what that does psychologically. It makes people feel replaceable. It makes commitment feel optional. It encourages the belief that something better might always be a swipe away. In other words, the presence of infinite choice has created a scarcity of emotional depth. This creates what some psychologists call the paradox of choice. When you have too many options, you stop valuing what's in front of you and start wondering what you might be missing. It fuels infidelity, not because people are evil, but because the temptation to explore just one more is literally in your pocket 24/7. Let's talk about how we treat each other in the dating world. Modern dating has created new terms to describe very old behaviors, but now they're faster, colder, and more acceptable. Ghosting, disappearing without explanation, breadcrumbing, leading someone on with occasional attention but no intention of commitment. Orbiting, staying in someone's digital world but never engaging meaningfully. Benching, keeping someone on hold while you pursue others. Soft launching relationships, hard blocking exes. This language, while cheeky on the surface, speaks to a deeper cultural shift. We've gamified connection. We treat people like digital avatars, swiped, matched, used, then archived. In a world where emotional cruelty can be delivered via a tap or a scroll, is it any wonder that cheating feels less serious? We've trained ourselves to disconnect with ease, to prioritize convenience over accountability, to blur lines between connection and consumption, and that emotional detachment is fertile ground for betrayal. Another cultural force shaping modern dating is hyper-individualism. We're in an era where personal fulfillment, self-care, and living your truth are emphasized, sometimes at the cost of relational accountability. Now, there's nothing wrong with prioritizing your happiness. Boundaries matter, healing matters, autonomy matters. But when do what's right for me becomes a blanket excuse to betray someone's trust, avoid hard conversations, dodge emotional responsibility, then we've crossed a line. Modern dating is full of I deserve narratives. I deserve passion. I deserve freedom. I deserve excitement. I deserve a perfect partner. And if you're not it, I'll find someone who is. This creates a culture where temporary satisfaction is placed above long-term investment and where cheating is rationalized as just doing what's right for me. Social media has made relationships harder in ways we're only beginning to understand. You see attractive people all day. You see curated images of perfect couples. You see DMs filled with temptation. You see your partner like or be liked by strangers. You see exes, flings, friends of friends, all accessible, all watching. This creates a sense of emotional exposure. You're no longer dating someone privately. You're performing a relationship in public. And when things feel imperfect, as they naturally will, it's easy to fall into the trap of, look at how happy they are. Maybe I'm settling. If I looked like him, her, my partner wouldn't cheat on me. I could message someone right now and feel wanted again. The illusion of infinite options, coupled with the pressure to project relationship perfection, creates fragility, and fragile relationships are vulnerable to infidelity. Polyamory, open relationships, ethical non-monogamy, situationships, friends with benefits, queer platonic bonds, entanglements. Modern dating includes a wider spectrum of relationship structures than ever before, and for many that's empowering. It offers flexibility, agency, and inclusivity. But here's the issue. We're not all playing by the same rules. Some people believe flirting is cheating. Some think sleeping with someone else is fine, as long as it's disclosed. Some say emotional cheating is worse than physical. Some don't even define themselves as in a relationship after months of dating. When expectations aren't clearly discussed or mutually agreed upon, cheating becomes not just easy, it becomes inevitable. In modern dating, betrayal often isn't about the act itself, it's about mismatched assumptions. And because many fear having the what are we talk, they default to ambiguity, and ambiguity breeds betrayal. People are marrying later, settling down later, having kids later, if at all. There's more exploration, more freedom, more time to figure it out. That's not inherently bad, but it does create a cultural environment where long-term commitment is no longer the goal. It's just one option among many. And when commitment is delayed, sometimes emotional maturity is too. People want the comfort of a relationship with the freedom of being single. They want loyalty from their partner, but flexibility for themselves. They crave deep connection, but can't give up the attention economy of Tinder, Instagram, or Snap. It's a setup for cheating, not because people are inherently disloyal, but because we haven't developed the tools to hold tension. We want comfort and novelty, security and freedom, stability and adrenaline. And sometimes we cheat because we don't know how to choose or how to grieve what we gave up when we did. In summary, modern dating has changed everything. We're not operating in the same world our parents or grandparents did. We're navigating algorithm-driven romance, casual cruelty masked as honesty, a marketplace of bodies and bios, emotional unavailability in a hyper-connected world, and a culture of temporary attention over permanent commitment. So yes, everybody cheats, not just because people are selfish, but because modern love is a minefield, full of distractions, temptations, and deeply confusing signals about what love, loyalty, and longevity are supposed to mean. If we want to reclaim the idea of true love, or at least meaningful love, we need to build new muscles. Emotional discipline, honest communication, clarity of intent, and the willingness to unplug from the noise long enough to truly see each other. Because in the modern dating game, the biggest risk isn't rejection, it's forgetting how to actually connect. So we've talked about infidelity, psychology, and the ever-shifting terrain of modern dating. Now let's turn our gaze towards something even more elusive. The happy couple. You know the ones. They seem rock solid. They post anniversary photos, take matching vacations, and finish each other's sentences at dinner parties. They're the people who give us hope that forever might still be possible. But here's the hard question. Are they really happy? Or are we seeing a carefully managed illusion? Let's pull back the curtain on what happiness actually looks like in long-term relationships and how it's often misunderstood, misrepresented, or just plain mythologized. 1. The myth of effortless love. Many of us grow up believing that when you meet the one, love will just flow effortlessly. We imagine natural compatibility, constant attraction, seamless communication, fights that resolve themselves, and intimacy that never fades. But here's the truth. Even the happiest couples struggle. In fact, what sets them apart isn't the absence of conflict. It's their ability to handle conflict constructively. Happy couples argue. Happy couples feel doubt. Happy couples go through dry spells, temptations, and moments of resentment. But they've learned skills, emotional intelligence, communication, trust building, forgiveness, that allow them to repair and reconnect over and over again. So if you're comparing your relationship to someone else's highlight reel, don't. That's not love. That's marketing. What we see in public rarely matches what happens in private. Some of the happiest couples are in sexless marriages, engaged in quiet power struggles, dealing with unspoken resentments, practicing mutual denial just to keep the peace, or even navigating private infidelities under a public mask of loyalty. Why? Because it's easier and more socially acceptable to perform happiness than to admit you're struggling. There's immense social pressure to win at love, to prove your relationship is healthier than your ex's, stronger than your single friends, more functional than your parents' marriage. In many cultures, especially those steeped in traditional or religious values, there's an additional layer of shame around acknowledging relationship issues, especially for women. This leads to emotional suppression and, in some cases, codependent silence. Happy couples aren't always happy. They're sometimes just very good at managing optics. Here's a less talked about truth. In many so-called happy relationships, one partner is often carrying the bulk of the emotional labor. This includes remembering anniversaries, soothing after fights, planning date nights, checking in emotionally, initiating hard conversations, managing the household's emotional climate. In heterosexual relationships, this burden often falls on women. They become the therapist, the cheerleader, the conflict manager, the caretaker, the emotional translator. Meanwhile, their partner gets the credit for being solid, reliable, or chill. But what's really happening is a form of emotional outsourcing. Yes, the couple looks happy, but one person is doing the invisible work of making happiness happen. That's not partnership, that's imbalance, and it creates deep, slow-growing resentment that can ultimately rupture trust or lead to emotional infidelity, even in relationships that seem unshakable. Just because a couple has been together for 10, 20, or 40 years doesn't mean they're satisfied. In fact, many long-term couples stay together for economic reasons, stay together for the kids, stay together because they fear starting over, stay because they're trauma bonded, stay because of religious pressure or societal judgment. Their relationship becomes a form of emotional inertia, moving forward not because of love, but because of habit. These couples aren't thriving, they're surviving, and sometimes survival becomes the goal. If we didn't divorce, then we succeeded. But that's a dangerously low bar. A successful relationship isn't defined by duration, it's defined by growth, reciprocity, emotional safety, and yes, a willingness to be vulnerable even when it's inconvenient. So next time you hear someone say, "We've been married for 30 years, the better follow-up question might be, but are you still growing together? Are you still choosing each other? Because staying isn't the same as loving." So if it's not perfection or appearances or endurance, what does make a couple genuinely happy? Here's what relationship research and psychology actually show. Mutual respect. Not just tolerance, but genuine regard for each other's intelligence, values, and boundaries. Emotional attunement. The ability to read, respond, and validate each other's emotional needs. Conflict recovery. not avoiding fights, but learning to repair quickly and with empathy. Shared values and vision, a common foundation for decision-making, parenting, money, and life goals. Autonomy within connection, each partner maintaining their individual identity while choosing to invest in the us. Humor and joy, playfulness, shared laughter, and a capacity to not take everything so seriously. Sexual honesty. This doesn't mean wild passion every night. It means open conversations about desire, needs, boundaries, and changes over time. Forgiveness. Because mistakes will happen, and forgiveness is the bridge back to trust. These are the things that create lasting, evolving love, not staged photos or anniversary posts with hashtags like blessed. Finally, let's challenge the entire premise of what happiness even means in a relationship. Maybe true happiness isn't never fighting, always agreeing, constant butterflies. Maybe it's showing up even when you don't want to, listening with the intent to understand, not to win, growing awkwardly, painfully, beautifully, together, letting your partner see the ugliest parts of you and staying anyway, and being brave enough to evolve as individuals and as a team. Happiness might not be constant, but wholeness can be, truth can be, connection can be, and maybe in the end that's more valuable than the illusion of perfection. In summary, the truth about happy couples is this: most of them aren't living a fairy tale. They're working daily to protect something fragile, beautiful, and real. They know that love isn't a constant high. It's a practice, one that requires awareness, repair, grace, and a whole lot of humility. So the next time you look at a couple and feel like your love life doesn't measure up, remember, you're probably comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. Happiness isn't about the image. It's about how people treat each other when no one's watching. Let's go straight into the heart of the debate, because this one is messy, provocative, and deeply personal. Can we, as human beings, actually be monogamous? Or is monogamy just an outdated cultural expectation, one we keep clinging to because we're afraid of the alternative? This is where things get controversial, because depending on who you ask, you'll get wildly different answers. Some say monogamy is a natural and beautiful commitment. Others call it a social construct that fights against biology. Still others say it's possible, but only if we're radically honest about what it demands. Let's break it down from multiple angles: biological, historical, psychological, and cultural, and ask whether we're setting ourselves up for disappointment by assuming we should love just one person forever. Let's start with the evolutionary argument, and yes, this gets uncomfortably real. According to evolutionary biology, humans evolved to spread their genes, not necessarily to stay with one partner for life. In fact, most mammals are not monogamous. Even among primates, monogamy is rare. Chimpanzees, for example, are wildly promiscuous. Our closest relatives in the animal kingdom tend to form temporary bonds, not lifelong ones. From a purely biological perspective, some researchers argue that men may be wired for variety, seeking to maximize reproduction by mating with multiple partners. Women, meanwhile, may seek security and resources, but can also be drawn to genetically better partners, even outside their main relationship, a theory known as dual mating strategy. But here's the twist. While sexual monogamy may not be hardwired, pair bonding is a big part of human evolution. We form strong emotional attachments. We just may not be naturally inclined to be sexually exclusive forever. This raises the uncomfortable possibility that we may be trying to force a biologically temporary system into a lifelong institution. Contrary to popular belief, monogamy isn't some timeless moral truth. It's a relatively recent cultural invention. In fact, for much of human history, polygamy, especially polygyny, one man, multiple women, was common and socially accepted in many civilizations. Monogamy became mainstream in the West largely because of property, inheritance, and patriarchy. In ancient Greece and Rome, marriage was more about producing legitimate heirs than about love. In medieval Europe, the church began promoting monogamy to regulate sexual behavior, legitimize inheritance, and prevent elite men from hoarding women and resources. The modern romantic ideal of one true love forever, didn't really become popular until the 18th and 19th centuries, especially with the rise of the novel, romantic poetry, and Victorian morality. So monogamy, as we know it today, is not natural in the sense of being biologically inevitable. It's cultural, and it serves social, political, and economic purposes. In today's world, monogamy is harder than ever. Not because we've become worse people, but because our expectations of relationships have become unrealistically high. We expect our partner to be our lover, best friend, therapist, career coach, co-parent, buddy, adventure buddy, financial partner, emotional support system. Historically, this wasn't the case. People relied on communities, families, religion, and friends for different emotional needs. Now we expect everything from one person for decades. That's a monumental burden. It's no wonder many people crack under the pressure, not because they don't love their partner, but because no one can be everything to someone else. So maybe the problem isn't with monogamy itself, but with the impossible weight we place on it. As more people challenge traditional norms, there's been a surge in polyamory, open marriages, relationship anarchy, swinging communities, and other forms of ethical non-monogamy. These arrangements are based on honesty, consent, and clear communication, not cheating or betrayal. They aim to separate sex from exclusivity and love from possession, but they're not easy either. Contrary to the free love stereotype, open relationships often require more communication, more boundaries, more emotional regulation, and more self-awareness. Some people thrive in these structures, others crash and burn, but their growing visibility shows us one thing: there is no one-size-fits-all model for love. Let's be clear, monogamy can work. In fact, many people find deep satisfaction, safety, and growth in lifelong monogamous relationships. But here's the key: monogamy can't be a default anymore. It has to be a choice, and it has to be actively maintained. That means having hard conversations about desire, temptation, and boundaries, acknowledging that attraction to others doesn't mean failure, making room for evolution in the relationship, practicing ongoing consent, continuing to choose each other, not just once at the altar, but again and again. If monogamy is to survive in the 21st century, it must be flexible, not rigid, transparent, not idealized, honest, not repressed. So why does this matter? Because when we don't talk honestly about the limits of monogamy, we set people up for shame when they feel attraction outside the relationship, equate cheating with moral failure rather than unmet needs or lack of skills, force people into boxes they don't fit into, pathologize normal human feelings like desire or curiosity. And worst of all, we keep pretending that love equals ownership. It doesn't. Real love, whether monogamous or not, is built on choice, not control. Can we be monogamous? Yes, but not by accident and not without confronting some hard truths. Monogamy today must be intentional, vulnerable, evolving, and chosen, not imposed. For some, monogamy is deeply fulfilling. For others, it's a prison, and for many more, it's something in between. The question isn't whether monogamy is outdated. The question is, are we honest enough with ourselves and our partners to build relationships that actually work for us, whether that's one love or many? Let's face it, cheating isn't just a betrayal, it's a bomb. When it goes off, it doesn't just wound the people involved, it detonates trust, identity, history, and sometimes entire families. But here's the twist we rarely talk about. Cheating isn't always about desire. It's often about something deeper and more human. And if we're brave enough to look at it closely, cheating doesn't just destroy. Sometimes it reveals. Let's unpack both the damage cheating causes and the uncomfortable lessons it brings to the surface. 1. The emotional fallout. Trust isn't easily repaired. When someone cheats, the first casualty is trust. And trust isn't just some fluffy emotional concept. It's the very fabric of safety and intimacy in any relationship. Once that fabric is ripped, the effects can be devastating. Constant suspicion and anxiety, hypervigilance, checking phones, needing proof of loyalty, loss of self-esteem. Why wasn't I enough? Deep emotional trauma that can mirror symptoms of PTSD. The betrayed partner often feels like their reality has been rewritten without their consent. The timeline of their relationship fractures. They begin questioning, was anything ever real? That kind of psychological destabilization doesn't go away overnight, and sometimes it never does. Cheating doesn't just hurt partners, it hurts families. Cheating doesn't exist in a vacuum. It echoes through marriages, households, and generational legacies. When there are children involved, the effects compound. Kids may witness conflict, instability, or even separation. They might internalize blame. Their future perceptions of love and loyalty get distorted. Even adult children of infidelity often carry unresolved pain, mistrust, or confusion about what love should look like. And then there's the extended family, in-laws, friends, community, all left to take sides, assign blame, or grieve what was lost. Cheating doesn't just impact a couple, it impacts a system. Now, this part is hard, but it's necessary. Let's talk about the person who cheats, because yes, they made a choice. Yes, that choice has consequences. But no, not all cheaters are narcissists or monsters. In many cases, cheating isn't about sex at all. It's about loneliness, emotional neglect, feeling unseen or unappreciated, desperation for validation, avoidance of conflict or vulnerability. Some people cheat not because they want someone else, but because they feel they've lost themselves. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it complicates the narrative. And sometimes that complication is where real healing begins. The wake-up call. What cheating exposes. Cheating often forces people to confront truths they've been avoiding. For couples, that the intimacy has been eroding for years, that they're living parallel lives, not sharing an emotional home, that communication has broken down into performance and politeness. For individuals, that they were trying to fix a broken self through external attention, that they were afraid of conflict and chose secrecy instead, that they didn't even know what they needed until it was too late. Cheating can expose emotional neglect, poor communication, resentment that's gone unspoken, a lack of shared vision. It's not just an act of betrayal. It's often a symptom of something deeper that was already fractured. Can you heal from cheating? Maybe, but it's rare and grueling. Some couples do recover from infidelity, but let's be clear, it's not about moving on. It's about rebuilding something entirely new. To heal, both partners must be willing to own their roles without justifying the betrayal, sit in enormous discomfort, redefine trust from the ground up, learn how to communicate honestly, often for the first time. Therapists often say healing from infidelity is like healing from a death, because in many ways it is. The old relationship dies, and a new one, if it's going to exist, has to be born. That doesn't mean everyone should stay. Sometimes the healthiest move is to walk away. But for those who choose to stay and do the work, it's possible to find a deeper kind of intimacy, one rooted in truth, not illusion. Let's zoom out. The prevalence of cheating in movies, music, politics, personal lives isn't just about weak morals or temptation. It's a mirror reflecting our collective discomfort with monogamy, the pressure we put on romantic partners to meet every need, our lack of education around communication, conflict, and sexuality, the fantasy that passion should never fade, and if it does, something must be wrong. In other words, cheating is more than personal failure. It's often a cultural symptom of deeper dysfunction in how we define and expect love to function. Here's the silver lining, and yes, there can be one. If we're honest, cheating can become a profound teacher. It teaches us where we've been dishonest with our partners and ourselves, where we've ignored problems in the name of peace, what we truly need to feel loved, safe, and seen. That commitment is not just about saying I love you, but choosing someone daily, even when it's inconvenient. Sometimes cheating ends a relationship. Sometimes it forces one to transform. Either way, it demands a reckoning with the myths we've been taught about love and the truths we must uncover for ourselves. So what does cheating cost us? A lot. It breaks hearts, it destroys trust, it dismantles illusions, and it forces us to ask, what are we really looking for in love? But what can it teach us? Everything, if we let it. Because behind every betrayal is a truth we haven't yet faced, and maybe, just maybe, facing it is how we finally grow up in love. So, after everything we've unpacked, the betrayals, the psychology, the culture, the pain, the consequences, we're left standing at the edge of one final, fundamental question. Is true love just a fantasy, or is it a choice? It's a question as old as time. Fairy tales tell us love is destiny. Rom-coms tell us love is magical. Social media tells us love should be effortless and aesthetic. But real life tells a much messier story. Because in the real world, people fall out of love even when they don't want to. People cheat on partners they still care about. People get bored, lonely, restless, even in stable relationships. And passion doesn't pay the bills, raise the kids, or handle the late-night arguments. So, is love doomed? Is forever just a lie we tell ourselves to feel safe? Let's not be so quick to throw it all away. Let's look at love not as a perfect fantasy, but as a flawed, evolving, deeply human decision. Because here's the truth most people avoid. True love isn't something you find. It's something you built, a choice made over and over again, especially when it's hard, especially when it's boring, especially when someone more attractive, more exciting, or more available shows up at the door. True love isn't about always being in love. It's about choosing to stay when it would be easier to leave, choosing to communicate instead of shutting down, choosing to grow together and apart without growing resentful. Love, real love, takes emotional literacy. It takes maturity. It takes people who are willing to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I won't lie, I won't run, and I won't sabotage what I said I'd protect, even when my ego screams otherwise. And yes, some people are not ready for that kind of love, and that's okay. Some people need more time, more experience, more heartbreaks and lessons and moments of clarity. But for those who are ready, those who understand that love isn't about constant butterflies or endless validation, true love becomes a radical act of endurance. It becomes sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it's chosen daily in spite of imperfection. So is true love a fantasy? Maybe the way it's sold to us, the soulmate myth, the effortless fairy tale, the one person who completes you? Yes. That version? Probably a fantasy. But the real version? The gritty, honest, vulnerable, sometimes excruciating, sometimes breathtaking, always intentional version? That's not a fantasy, that's a choice. And it's still one of the most powerful things we're capable of as human beings. If love has disappointed you, you're not alone. If you've been cheated on, you're not broken. If you've cheated and you regret it, you're not evil. You are human, messy, flawed, craving connection, just like the rest of us. But if you want a love that lasts, don't wait for it. Don't wish for it. Create it. Cultivate it. Choose it. Every single day, because at the end of the day, true love isn't found in fairy tales. It's forged in the fire of real life. Thank you for being here, for sitting with the discomfort, and for daring to ask the questions most people are afraid to say out loud. If this episode made you think, share it. If it made you feel seen, talk about it. And if you're still figuring out what love means to you, you're exactly where you need to be. Until next time, take care of your heart and be honest with it.